Hello, and welcome back to the My Sugar-Free Journey podcast. I am here today with Amy Berger, and we've experienced a little bit of technical difficulties, so hopefully we can get this up and running and everything's going to be okay. It's no doubt it's due to this. I've got a computer that sits in my back office. The only thing I use it for is to record podcasts, and lately it's been acting up. So I'm wondering if maybe I should get this thing replaced. But my guest today again here is Amy Berger. She's been a guest on the podcast before, but I wanted to have her back on because she's got a new book. She's got a new book that specifically deals with how to overcome stalls in your weight loss. This is an important subject for me personally because I'm in the middle of a stall that I'd like to get some help on. This is also a subject that I think needs to be talked about more as we kind of go through this odd time with the coronavirus and this lockdown, because we know for a fact now that obesity is a strong comorbidity with this very poor outcomes with this virus. That it seems that people who have the most weight to lose are getting affected the most by the virus. We know that things like obesity, type 2 diabetes is another strong one. High blood pressure is another strong comorbidity with this virus. And all of these things, we know, if you've listened to this podcast at least once or twice, all of these things go along with chronically high blood sugar and chronically high levels of blood insulin. So we want to do everything that we can to control our blood sugar, control the levels of our insulin, get those down as low as possible, and mainly, if we have the weight to lose, get the weight off of our bodies so that we can be healthy. So, Amy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
You are very welcome. So, just really quick, by way of background, I know that my listeners know who you are, I think, and if they're listening to this podcast, they're probably listening to other low carb podcasts, and so you've been interviewed many times. So very quickly, can you give us your background, how you came into this, and why we should listen to what you have to say?
Yeah, sure. The nutshell version is that I am not unlike many of the people probably listening or watching, that I had my own transformation through low carb keto. I used to be heavier. I never dealt with morbid obesity, but I was significantly chubby. And I was chubby despite doing what I thought were all the right things. Lots and lots of exercise. I've run 2 marathons and lots of, whole grain cereal with skim milk and my light margarine or my whole grain toast. And the weight would not budge no matter what I did. And I came into this via the Atkins Diet. That was my sort of entree into this whole world. And I've been eating low carb for over 15 years. I'm not always super, super duper strict keto, but I'm always low carb. I always restrict carbohydrate to some extent. And I'm kind of a career changer. I wasn't always a nutritionist. I was in and out of a lot of jobs that I wasn't satisfied by and wasn't fulfilled by. And it occurred to me one day, like, hey, wait, nutritionist is a job. Like, maybe I could do that work and help other people learn about low carb. So I went back to school. I have a master's degree in human nutrition, and I do a lot of writing also. So I work with clients, but I also do a lot of writing. So this new book is called The Stall Slayer, stallslayer.com. But I also have a book about Alzheimer's disease, which they regularly call type 3 diabetes or diabetes of the brain. So if you're wondering why a low-carb keto nutritionist would be writing about Alzheimer's, that's why. But I would say, since we are going to talk about weight loss, there's some other issues that I want to kind of bring up as we go on. But in the years that I've been learning about this way of eating, I've come to appreciate that it's so powerful for so many diverse health issues that it's almost like weight loss is one of the least impressive things this does. Hey, you can get off your insulin for type 2 diabetes. You can reduce your requirement, the total need for insulin on if you have type 1. You can reverse PCOS, non-alcoholic fatty liver. Migraines can get better. Your skin can clear up. All these wonderful things. Oh, and you might also lose a few pounds along the way. So, but I don't want to get too far afield yet, but you said something really important in the intro, which we were talking about weight and with this virus, how it does seem there are certain things that make you either more susceptible to getting it, and if you do get it, it makes your prognosis worse. You have a greater likelihood of not doing well or of losing your life. And weight is certainly one of them. Obesity is one of them. But you said the magic word, which is insulin, because it's not, obviously not everyone who's contracting this virus or who's dying from this virus is overweight. But many of them have, like you said, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, these other issues that are also driven by the insulin. And so when they often say, oh, no known comorbidities, or this was a seemingly healthy person, seemingly healthy. And I am absolutely acknowledging that this is a virus and it can attack anybody. Nobody's immune, keto or not, but when they say seemingly healthy, it might be because they're not looking at blood sugar, and they're certainly probably not looking at insulin. So I think there's a lot of hidden health problems that are not apparent in what's generally looked at.
One of the first news articles I read, like, been months ago, about this poor woman that died of, and she said, it said in the article, she had no underlying symptoms, no underlying, pre-existing conditions, and it just got her. And then they showed a picture of her, and she was 400 pounds. And I was like, there's no way a 400-pound woman didn't have underlying problems. It's just impossible. You can't get that big and not have sleep apnea, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, something.
Right.
So the idea that, and I'm sure as more data comes out, we're going to find some subset of people who really and truly don't have any, don't really have any underlying or pre-existing conditions, and the virus. The virus got them for whatever reason, or put him in the hospital for a couple weeks or whatever. But I can almost guarantee you that when all the data comes out, we're going to find a strong correlation between blood sugar levels and the effect that virus has on the body. I can almost.
It's already there. The data's already there, I think.
Yeah.
But like you said, I want to make it clear that I don't think either of us is saying, obesity doesn't cause this, and it's not that the obesity made you get the virus. It's whatever immune compromise might happen because of the metabolic state, because of the high insulin, that some people are overweight, some people are at a much smaller body weight, but they have some other issue. And so there's so much stigma about weight. And I've made a point on social media to kind of say, listen, this is not, there's just a lot of stigma and shaming out there, and it's nobody is immune to this. Nobody's immune. It's just that having these certain issues makes you more susceptible.
Because I'll do these Instagram videos or whatever.
You're freezing up again.
Able to blow down the bricks house. Well, we have, it says the internet condition is unstable, but hopefully they got all that. But for a lot of us have been building the houses of our bodies out of straw and sticks. We've been eating crappy foods. We've been eating fast food. We've been not exercising. We haven't been getting enough sleep. We haven't been getting enough sunshine. We haven't, connected with other people like we have, and now the big bad wolf is at the door. We've got a virus out there that wants to kill us. And if your house is made of straw, it's not going to stand up well. If it's made of sticks, it may stand up a little bit better, but maybe not. You've got to have a house full of bricks. You've got to have a body that is healthy, that is strong, and that is fit. So, having said all of that, your book, you're looking at. Actually, before I get into that, I wanted to say by way of preamble that stalls are common. Especially this is, I think, more than anything, this is kind of what I want to pick your brains about. We see in the slow carb keto community leaders, thought leaders in the community that have lost hundreds of pounds. I've lost 200 pounds. 100 pounds, 150, 200 pounds. And then we get them to a point where they've put back on, I put back on 40. But we see people who've been put back on 60, people put back on 80. I mean, big leaders in the field. And this, first of all, I know that if you've already been morbidly obese, the chances of you becoming morbidly obese later are up dramatically. Just your body can do that. Not everyone can be morbidly obese. So, we know that if you've been morbidly obese once, you can be morbidly obese again. But we see these stalls and the weights of these people who are, trying to position themselves as leader in this field starting to creep up. And so that's one of the reasons why I think that your book is so important. I don't want to name anyone's names, but one of the reasons why your book is so important is because a lot of us, we need to figure out what's going on, tweak what needs to be tweaked, and get back to, taking control of our own health. But also, I mean, I feel personally, I want to tell as many people as I can that this is a great way to lose weight. I've put back on 40 pounds. I don't want that to be part of my story, but it is. So I want to be able to, focus on this and concentrate on this and get this weight back off my body for my own personal health, and also to be able to tell people, convincingly that this is a great tool to be able to take control of your own health. So
I also, before, I just want to kind of comment on that. Did you say you lost 200 pounds?
Yeah, I lost 200 pounds.
That's amazing. So
it is amazing.
You've maintained a 160-pound weight loss.
Right.
I mean, let's not discount that.
I definitely try to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the part of the story I try to focus on.
Yeah, let's not regain more than 40. But the thing is, I think that that's an important part of the process. It probably makes you more empathetic to people who regain or who stall or who have trouble, because it helps other people out there see that this is difficult sometimes. For some people out there, make it look like magic. They lose 100 pounds, they never look back, the weight never comes on again. And I think that happens, and I don't know if that's the majority or the minority, but certainly a lot of people have a more difficult time, and they need to know that they're not alone, and that it's, you regain, okay, how did this happen? What can I do about it? And it's not the end of the world, and I think, I think that's an important, it's a good lesson for people out there to see that happens, and it's not always the smooth sailing that you wish it was. Right.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. So let's get into common causes of stalls, common causes of weight rebound, weight regain, and I guess it should be said that all of this is within the confines of a low carb diet. So people can be on a low carb diet and still stall, and still have weight rebound. But obviously, there's other factors at play. So let's go with what is the most common one that you're seeing.
Okay, before I even answer that, I just want to make it clear to people that what is a stall? If you've gone a week or two with no weight loss, that's not a stall. Stalls are not measured in days. They're measured in several weeks and sometimes months. And it's not just your scale weight, because it's really not uncommon for people's weight to stay the same, but they're getting smaller. And for whatever, it could be shifts in water, it could be shifts in muscle versus body fat. So even if your scale weight is staying the same, if your measurements are getting smaller, if your clothing is getting looser, you're not stalled. So you can't go solely by the scale. And you also kind of have to remember that weight loss is not this magical linear process downward. It's totally normal, totally fine to have little blips up and down along the way. You lose a little bit, you stay the same for a couple of days or weeks, you lose a little bit, maybe you gain a pound or two, you stay the same, you lose. It's a bumpy, squiggly line. I have a diagram of this in the book. It's, that if you get on the scale every day, you'll make yourself crazy over these daily fluctuations. As long as over time that trend is downward, then it's fine. So anyway, the answer to getting back to your question, I think by far the most common reason for stalls on low carb keto is what we call carb creep. People are just eating, they're eating way, way less carbohydrate than they were before, and way less carbohydrate than most people out there. But in the context of low carb keto, they're eating just a little too much carbohydrate for it to be working the way it needs to.
Okay. So what are common things that people are adding to their diet that are causing that?
So it really depends. It's never like people are eating, bread and pancakes and pasta. They know that stuff's off limits. It tends to be some of the keto treats. Right. A lot of people can get into trouble with different kinds of sugar alcohols. Some people like the, erythritol, xylitol, mannitol. Some people have no problem with these. Some people just, it does affect their blood sugar and insulin a little bit more than somebody else's. So it tends to be kind of those packaged, the keto cookies, the keto bars and stuff like that. It could also be for some people just too many seemingly benign things like vegetables and nuts and stuff. Those add up. And right. Even though they're very, very low carb, if you're eating too many of them, too much of them, then your total carbohydrate load for the day could be higher than you realize. But I would say mostly it's the packaged stuff that's marketed as keto because it has a really low net carb count because they add a lot of fiber, they add a lot of sugar alcohols. And so some people, if you count the net carbs, they subtract all that. But for some people, that's not a good way to go. And that really, so their total carb load for the day is just a lot higher than they think it is.
That's what I follow Tro Kalayjian on Twitter, and he was posting the other day about something that he, like what he ate during the day, and it was a lot of vegetables. He had cucumber, he had a couple of bell peppers, I don't know, an onion, something like that. But then he broke down how many carbs he had, and he said, I had as many carbs yesterday as I would get in an apple. It was about 27 grams. He said, and this is what a lot of people do. They think they're doing, good, but they're eating a lot of vegetables. I know that whole vegetables have less impact on blood sugar because there's lots of fiber, but still it's something. He said I think it was 27 grams was the number he came up with. He had 27 grams of carbohydrates in one day, as much as in a single apple. But that for most people is fine. I think over the course of a day, that to me, if that's total carbs, not net, that's still very low. But I think there's some people that would be over that. Some people can do 40, 50, 60 grams of carbs and still be fine. Some people really need to be ultra right. low. And what about, is there any way to, like I've found that there are some foods that I cannot eat and lose weight. Foods that other low carb people could probably do just fine. Like I can't eat nuts. I just can't. I have to limit cheese. I have to, there's probably a couple other ones that I can think of. And I've always chalked it up to the fact that I'm more insulin resistant than the average person. And so that's just something that I have to look out for. Is that what's going on, or is there some wrinkle in my personal metabolism that's makes it for me, or what can we say about those things?
I think so. There's the second most common thing that tends to trip people up in weight loss is too much fat. Okay. And that's a super controversial thing to say about keto, but the fact is ketogenic diets are not unlimited in fat. Even when your carbs are really, really low, the more fat you're eating, the less of a need your body has to use its own stored fat for fuel instead. Mm-hmm. And so there's a whole chapter on my book about too much fat. And it's you said the two magic culprits are nuts and cheese. Mm-hmm. And it's not that, like, nuts and cheese are totally fine for ketogenic diets, but most people, myself included, we tend to overdo them. Right. And it's, we hate the C word, we hate that calorie word, but I prefer to call it energy. It's the same thing, it's just semantics. But if, nuts and cheese are such highly concentrated sources of energy, sources of fat, and they're easy to overdo. I could eat half a bag of almonds and not even really feel full. It doesn't fill me up. But before I know it, maybe I've had 2,000 calories worth of almonds. Right. And they're just easy to overdo. And the same thing with cheese. Now, cheese, I think, is a little better. It's got a little more protein to go along with the fat than the nuts and seeds do, but that's really why I don't know that it has much to do with the insulin sensitivity. I think it's more that those are just very delicious, And because they're so highly concentrated in energy and fat, they're easy to overdo. And, people need to understand that what makes a ketogenic diet work and what makes you have this metabolic shift to running on fat is the absence of the carbohydrate, not the presence of fat. So you don't add a ton of fat, the butter in your coffee, the oil on everything, because like chasing these ratios and these percentages, they think they're supposed to have 70 or 80% fat. That's not, this diet works because of very low carb, not because of super high fat. And like I said, the more, and I don't want to make anyone afraid of fat. This is still a high fat diet, but remember that some of that fat you want to come from your already stored body fat rather than from
So if we're advocating for low carbs and to somewhat control the amount of fat that we're eating, to allow room for for the body to use stored fat as fuel, it sounds like you're advocating for higher protein and using the protein leverage hypothesis, where you're trying to fill up on protein, a little bit of fat, and very little carbs. So what do you have to say about that idea that we should be protein leveraging more than trying to eat as much fat as possible?
I do love the protein leverage hypothesis. And if people are unfamiliar with that, in a nutshell, it's just that so seemingly every animal or every mammal, Ted Naiman talks about this a lot. Yeah. All these organisms that have been studied have an absolute requirement for protein. And you will eat and you will seek food until that protein requirement is met. So when you eat a food that's very low in protein, something like butter or something like nuts, right, you will eat and eat and eat and eat until you get the protein you need. But how much extra energy came with that protein? How much fat did you have to eat to get that amount of protein? Or how much carbohydrate did you have to eat to get that amount of protein? And I think that is correct to some extent. But I also know there are some people who do better with higher fat. They find that higher fat satiates them more so that they're able to eat less. They're able to stop eating without overdoing it. And I know that I find if I don't eat enough fat at the end of my meal, I'm looking for more fat. So again, I don't want to make people afraid of fat, but the way I see it is if you're eating a ribeye steak, a ribeye steak is pretty fatty. You don't have to melt butter on top of that. You don't have to melt blue cheese on top of it. It's delicious, I know. You don't have to do it. Or like a fatty pork chop. If you're having bacon and eggs, you don't have to douse that in olive oil. So there's plenty of fat that comes along with those foods naturally, I think. And protein, there is a lot of fear mongering about protein in the keto world, that it turns into sugar or it kicks you out of ketosis. And I think there are some rare cases of people that seem to be inordinately sensitive to protein, in that it does raise their blood sugar or kind of give them more of an insulin response than someone else would get. But for the most part, I think people can probably eat more protein than they are, and it's probably going to help them.
So one of the core tenets, I think, of this the whole low carb to lose weight idea is that losing weight is primarily a hormonal action, not so much a calorie action. You have a very lengthy chapter in your book about the thyroid, the role of the thyroid on these hormones. And so it makes sense, if weight loss is primarily hormonal, then the gland that's in charge of all the hormones would be a key player in weight loss. So can you walk us through, like, what is the thyroid's job? What does it do? And then how can we know that it's not playing fair?
Sure. So yeah, it is kind of a long chapter, because I personally have hypothyroidism, and I see it either, and I'm not a physician, but I see it either undiagnosed, or like in my clients, they don't know they have it, or they know they have it and they're actually already taking medication for it, but they're not on the right type or the right dose. So they still have all the same signs and symptoms they had before, including weight gain or inability to lose weight. Right. So the thyroid gland is, they call it the master regulator of your metabolic rate. if there's people that have just a fast metabolism. They're just these butterflies. They burn off anything. Right. They eat twice as much as you do, and they're half your size, And then some of the rest of us feel like we're on slow mode. Like our bodies, no matter, like I ran the marathons, no matter how much exercise I did, no matter what I did, my whole body was just slower and I couldn't get the weight off. And that has a lot to do with thyroid. And, some of the other signs and symptoms of low thyroid kind of point to the fact that your whole body is set to slow mode. You tend to have a low resting heart rate, low blood pressure. You're cold all the time because even internally your body is not burning through enough energy to warm you, to keep your body temperature warm. And constipation is one. So even literally the movement of waste through your colon is slower. Everything's slower. And the problem that I see with this, I think I might be biased, and I recognize that I look for it everywhere because I see it everywhere. Because, who comes to me? People that are struggling. If people are doing low carb and keto and it's working, well, they don't need help from somebody. People that are coming to me because it's not working and they need help. So I do see it more often than not. And it's far more common in women. Men do get it, but it's a lot more common in women. And what the most important thing people need to understand is that most doctors only use 1 or 2 tests for thyroid function. And that's simply not enough because in so many people, those tests will be normal. But when you dig a little deeper at a lot of other thyroid related hormones, you will see abnormalities. And you'll be told, oh, your thyroid's normal. You just need to eat less and move more, when no, there's actually definitely a hormonal problem.
Yeah. So my wife has had thyroid issues in the past, and we've just recently, not contracted, that's not the right word, but we've enlisted the help of Dr. Jay Wrigley to try to figure this out for her.
I'm so glad to hear that because you won't go wrong with him.
Yeah. So he's given us the prescription. We're waiting on a few things to come in. In fact, I think today, once the mail runs, we'll have everything that she needs to get started. So I'm anxious to see what, not that she has a ton of weight to lose, but she's got some other issues with thyroid that she wants to try to tackle. So I'm excited for that to happen. But I've seen it with my own eyes that the thyroid gland is, if it gets a little off kilter, it's not only is it difficult to figure out how to fix it, but all of the studies and all of the data that we have to try to adjust the thyroid has been done on the general population that eats high carb. And we don't have a lot of data to figure out, how to put someone on a low carb diet and then adjust the thyroid from there. Go ahead.
There's a lot of people have thyroid conditions and they go on low carb or keto and it fixes itself. They improve. Yeah. They can either reduce their medicine or, eventually stop taking the medicine altogether. And that's not uncommon, but it doesn't happen all the time. Like it didn't work for me. It sounds like it didn't work for your wife. So, but yeah, and I think if you're on medication, periodically you have to assess how you feel. And ideally you'll be getting blood work done, every 6 months or so to see where you are. But I'm not a physician, but in my opinion, as someone who personally lives with this and has done some looking into it, I think your symptoms and how you feel are much more important than the lab numbers. The lab numbers are a guide and they can kind of verify how you're already feeling in your own body. But, whether you feel well or not. I mean, depression is a big symptom of hypothyroidism. So there's all kinds of other things that you'll know if you're feeling well or not. And I know for me, every several months, I have to adjust my dose a little bit up or a little bit down based on how I'm feeling. So even once you're on medicine, it's not like, okay, this is me for the rest of my life. You really have to just kind of assess things every now and then.
Huh. Yeah, it's very interesting. So I think, carb creep and thyroid issues are, those are probably the biggest two, but you've got a couple other things that we need to touch on very much, because I know sleep plays a role in weight loss. I know hydration plays a role in weight loss. I know, there's a bunch of other things that play a role in weight loss. So let's kind of take them in order. What would be the next thing on the checklist as you're going down that you're wanting to look at?
Well, so the next thing is there's a lot of medications that can either cause weight gain or make it more difficult to lose weight. And the good news is most of those, in someone that's on a low carb or ketogenic diet, over time with doctor supervision, of course, they'll actually be able to stop taking those medications or reduce the dose. So we would hope that that roadblock against the weight loss kind of goes away as they're able to stop take, because a lot of those medications are taken for things that low carb fixes, like type 2 diabetes. I mean, insulin is notorious for making people gain weight. Steroid medications, including injections for pain, for knee pain, arthritis, including nasal sprays for allergies. So that's the next thing I would look at is just medications, see if weight gain is a side effect of a medication that you're on. And then there is sleep and stress. I sort of put those two hand in hand. I don't know if one is worse than the other. Getting inadequate sleep or poor quality sleep can mess it. I think it's largely because it messes with insulin sensitivity the next day. So if you have broken sleep, or you just get not enough total sleep, your appetite and satiety hormones are wonky. And so you tend to be, if you've barely slept, those office donuts look a lot better than they maybe normally do when you're feeling well rested and you feel good. But even, and so you're more likely to give into that carby stuff. But even if you don't, even if you stick to low carb, the way your body processes the food you do eat is still a little different. Because of like the cortisol or the insulin, everything is just a little different than it would be. But I do have to say, I think for most people, that stuff is of lesser importance than the carb creep, slightly overdoing the fat, thyroid. I feel like make sure that all of that stuff is absolutely nailed down. And then, okay, now it's still not working. Well, how's my sleep? How's my stress? Because I do think those things are not unimportant, but that's not where I would start.
Yeah. So do you prescribe any type of exercise or anything like that to try to move the needle?
So that's a good question. I am in the camp where I think exercise does not really help you lose weight, but it can help you from regaining weight that you've lost. And, I know this from my own experience. I did a ton of exercise. It never helped. It did not help one bit. But I definitely encourage exercise because it does so many other things that are good for health, right? It's good for the respiratory system, good for the cardiovascular system. For some people, it's the best antidepressant. It's really good for your mood. And I think regardless of your weight situation, being active is important. But I speak to a lot of the keto doctors out there. Some of them have patients in wheelchairs. These are paraplegics, quadriplegics. They can't exercise. And if they just do strict keto, it still works. They can still lose a lot of weight, maybe, reverse some of their health problems that they had. So exercise isn't required. I do think it can help in the sense that I think it's good for insulin sensitivity. And if the insulin sensitivity and just your overall metabolic function is better, there's nothing bad about that. But I just think, I don't know. My own personal experience, exercise did not help, but I certainly encourage exercise for other reasons.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of been my experience too, is I can exercise, I cannot exercise. I just feel better with a little more muscle in my body. And
I will say, something that, and this is speculation, but I sort of speculate in the book. I think exercise on a low carb diet is different than exercise on a high carb diet, because if you're on a high carb diet and you're not very insulin sensitive, you eat carbs, your insulin is high, and insulin blocks the release of stored fat. So you're locked in carb burning mode. You eat carbs, you burn carbs, and then after the workout, you refuel with carbs. Right after, I got to replenish that glycogen. I got to have my rice. I got to have my power bar. Got to have my pasta. And so you're always in a carb burning cycle. Whereas if you're on a low carb diet, Now you're exercising, you're already in a fat burning state because of keto or low carb. Now when you exercise, proportionally you're burning more fat. So in that sense, I think if you're on a low carb diet, exercise is probably more effective than it is on a high carb diet. But I still think the food is more important than the exercise.
And what about what's become kind of the darling of the low carb community over the last year or two, the fasting? Is fasting something that you can do, should do?
You can do it. You don't have to do it. But when I say that, I don't mean, if I say you don't have to fast, that doesn't mean you should eat 18 times a day and that you should be grazing, you should constantly have your hand in a bowl of something. What I mean is, if you're not doing something wrong if you like to have 3 meals a day, even if you like to have 3 meals a day and a snack or 2 meals a day and a snack, there are certainly advantages to going some length of time without food. But, and they've actually done research on this, with regard to keeping blood sugar and insulin low, like, I forget the percentage, but like the vast majority of that is accomplished through the ketogenic diet, just by the carbohydrate restriction. If you're someone whose fat is especially stubborn and is not budging no matter what you do, then I do think extending that a little bit, maybe having only 1 or 2 meals a day, going a longer period of time where your body has no choice but to draw on its stored fat, I think that can be beneficial. And I think intermittent fasting, and by that, I'm not talking about extended, multi-day fasting. I mean, eating all your food within a 6-hour window or an 8 or even a 10-hour window, because most people eat all day long. So even a 10-hour window is less than a lot of standard American diet eaters. I think that can be good for resetting our relationship with hunger. Because so many of us, the second we feel a hunger pang, we're reaching for a snack, right? The second, and it's okay to be hungry. It's like Dr. Fung and Megan Ramos, they always say, hunger comes in waves. Mm-hmm. It's not like you get hungry and then you keep getting hungrier and hungrier and hungrier until you eat your own arm off, right? You get really hungry, but then if you ride it out, it kind of passes. And so I think that's psychologically good to really, truly recognize, am I hungry or do I just feel like having a snack? But so it's helpful, but it's become, so like you said, it's become the darling, but it's not required. If you are someone that, whether it's because of your family situation or your work situation, you do best with 3 meals a day, if you're happy with the results you're getting, there's nothing wrong with eating 3 meals a day.
Do you have any thoughts one way or the other on the carnivore diet?
Oh man, I do. It's kind of just like intermittent fasting. You can do the carnivore diet. You don't have to. I don't really have many concerns about the long-term safety. I mean, there seem to be a lot of people doing very, very well with it. But I also have to sometimes remind myself that what we see on social media is the highlight reel. We see everyone who's doing really well. The people that don't do so well don't tend to advertise it. They don't, I gained 20 pounds or this problem happened. They tend to keep that quiet. So we have to remember that. But obviously it's helping a lot of people. And I do think there are some people with these very strong sensitivities to certain plant foods, but just like with the fasting, if you like to eat vegetables and you feel good and you're happy with how things are going, don't let anyone make you feel less than or like an idiot or like you're doing something wrong if you're eating broccoli. I mean, I got into this through the Atkins diet. Dr. Atkins wrote his first book almost 50 years ago. And people followed the Atkins diet for decades and did great. And the Atkins diet allows for lettuce and broccoli and cauliflower and eggplant and all that stuff. And I personally eat a fair bit of vegetables. I don't think they're required. I think the carnivore diet is safe, but I like vegetables. Even when I was a kid, my mother never had to force me to eat them. She was a good cook, but she never had to force me to eat even things like Brussels sprouts. I like them. So if, don't buy into the fear mongering about vegetables. But I would say if you're doing what you think is a very, very solid, good, strict ketogenic diet, and you're still having problems, especially if it's something digestive or some kind of autoimmune thing that nobody can seem to explain, it's not a bad idea to try a carnivore diet, even just for a month or two, because what it is the ultimate elimination diet. It takes out, unless you happen to be allergic to pork or fish or something, it takes out all the common and all the less common food allergens.
Fantastic. Well, Amy, I appreciate you coming on. You've given us a wealth of information, but there's even more information in the book. So can you tell my listeners where that book is, how they can find it, maybe how they can find more from you?
Yes, thank you. So everybody can check it out at stallslayer.com. And my normal website is tuitnutrition.com, TUIT nutrition.com. Right now, so we're recording April 27th. Right now, the book is just a PDF ebook, but we do have plans to have a Kindle version and a paperback print on demand coming to Amazon, hopefully in the not too distant future. But right now, and I have a YouTube channel. My channel name is Tuit Nutrition, and that's also my handle on Twitter.
Perfect. And guys, we'll put links to all that in the show notes. You can find that at mysugarfreejourney.com/podcast. Amy, thank you so much for coming on.
Great. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, guys, we'll be right back with some more information.